Hi everybody, I'm Aaron Ettinger, professor of political science here at Carleton University, and let's talk about something that really matters. Let's talk about sports. Now this one is important to me because I've been a sports fan far longer than I've been a political science professor. But the intersection of sports and politics is absolutely fascinating, and the year 2026 is a banner year for sports and politics on the world stage. The biggest event in the 2026 global sports calendar is, of course, the FIFA World Cup. Now, as we know, it's being held in Canada, the United States, and Mexico at a very, very awkward time, since these three countries are at significant economic odds with the Donald Trump administration. But still, we're going to invite the world over, and we're going to try to host a pretty reasonable party. Now, think back to December 2025 at the World Cup draw. Gianni Infantino, the head of the FIFA organization, gave Donald Trump the FIFA World Peace Prize. Do you know what that is? Because I don't either. It's sort of this kind of off-brand Nobel Peace Prize. Now, we can laugh about it, but the real question is why? Why did Infantino do this? Well, he has his own interests. Right? He has every interest in maintaining the president's support for FIFA, maintaining good relations between his organization and the United States of America, and ultimately the profitability of this show that everybody's going to be putting on in June and July.
With Mexico and Canada, leaders from all three countries are attending the event.
This is truly one of the great honors of my life. And beyond awards, Johnny and I were discussing this. We saved millions and millions of lives. The Congo, as an example, over 10 million people killed, and it was heading for another 10 million very quickly. And it just, the fact that we could do that, India, Pakistan, so many different wars that we're able to end, in some cases, a little bit before they started.
Donald Trump knows about as much about world politics as he does probably about soccer. Right? Infantino's awarding of the FIFA World Cup to the President of the United States, of course, is just an act of obsequiousness and subservience. Right? Infantino has an interest in running a smooth show, running a smooth operation, and keeping the President of the United States happy. What this does to the principle of the, say, Nobel Peace Prize or notions of world peace is quite bad. Right? Awarding Donald Trump a made-up peace prize is nothing more than obsequiousness. This one's going to hurt, as you can tell. President Trump speaks to the New York Yankees in the locker room. Let's take a look.
I'll tell you what, George Steinbrenner was a great friend of mine, the whole family. It's a great family, and Randy is wonderful, and I will say you're going to win. George used to coach. For some reason, I don't know what it was, we won every time I came. Randy, is that right? Every time we came, we'd win a game, and he'd call me. He was, you think that was easy sitting with him for a game? It wasn't. It was brutal. You were exhausted at the end, but he won.
I can't take this anymore. I got to stop this before I throw up. Okay, this one obviously is upsetting to a guy like me, right? Donald Trump visiting the New York Yankees in their locker room back in September 2025. Now, okay, let's be real for a second. This is an important symbolic moment in the United States. It is the anniversary of the attacks. And of course, the President of the United States is going to be in attendance for this solemn moment. But why does a president of the United States want to get involved in sports? Well, this is really interesting. Like in the United States, being associated with sports has a sort of kind of everyman quality, right? And every once in a while, a president can use sports to generate a kind of national unity that is increasingly uncommon. George W. Bush threw out the first pitch in a World Series game only a couple of weeks after the 9/11 attacks. And now a generation later, Donald Trump is using his platform to affect the same kind of unity. Whether or not it is going to work, I don't think so. Also note, the Jays eliminated the Yankees in the American League Divisional Series, and it was one of the greatest moments of my life.
The Yankees lose.
Trump takes a lap of Daytona 500 lap in the presidential limo, the Beast. Let's take a look. All right, a car goes around in circles. Fantastic. But of course, Donald Trump is in the limo. Why does this matter? Well, it is the everyman quality of engagement with sports. Right? He looks cool. He looks like he's a sports fan. And of course, at the Daytona 500, he is appealing to right-leaning voters, predominantly right-leaning voters in Florida. It's a way for him to shore up his base. It's a way for him to look like a normal human being, like a sports fan. And of course, it's all symbolism. Here we go. President Donald J. Trump makes an appearance at UFC 314. All right, so here's Donald Trump making an appearance at a UFC event last year in 2025. This is another instance of Donald Trump sort of playing the everyman, but there's something even deeper going on here. Donald Trump owes a great deal of his electoral victory to the participation of young white men, right? And the UFC is where young white men go to be entertained in the sports sphere these days. And it's a perfect venue for a guy like Donald Trump, right? He is combative, he is adversarial, he likes to talk tough about masculinity and all that kind of stuff. And the UFC embodies all of that. His ability to mobilize UFC supporters is a major component of his victory in 2024. In the summer of 2026, there will be a UFC event held on the lawn of the White House. This is a remarkable moment in the history of the UFC, of course, of sports and politics, and of course the presidency. Right? Never before has something like this been undertaken. And it's a legitimation of a combat sport that has long been kind of relegated to the periphery of polite sports society. And it's a mainstreaming of the kind of attitudes and masculinities and sports affinities that are associated with the UFC.
President Trump took a bit of a detour to talk football. And he said he believes NFL players who protest during the national anthem should be fired, going back to Colin Kaepernick refusing to stand for it last season. And since then, players, of course, around the league have followed that lead. President Trump not mincing words regarding his stance on the subject.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired!
This is one of those major moments where Donald Trump stopped being a sports fan and started doing sports and politics in a new kind of way, in a divisive kind of way. In 2018, Donald Trump took the stage and condemned Colin Kaepernick for taking a knee in protest to police violence against black men in America. Now, Kaepernick's protest, taking a knee protest, had largely gone unnoticed or was only kind of gestured towards. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a big deal until Donald Trump made it a huge political issue. He got up on the stage in front of a rally and he says, wouldn't you love to see those SOBs fired, right? You're fired, get them out of here. And all of a sudden, Kaepernick's kneeling protest stopped being something about a specific relationship between black people in America and the police forces, and it became a partisan issue. If you were against Colin Kaepernick kneeling, you were for Donald Trump and vice versa. And by engaging in this kind of rhetoric, Donald Trump managed to crystallize a complicated conversation in very simplistic and unhelpful ways. All right, here we go. Donald Trump, the decline of the NFL and the rise of the USFL from 1984.
I have on Fifth Avenue called Trump Tower, and that's something that's more valuable than money.
We just bought this hotel 2-3 days ago. We did it for this news conference. We thought you people would...
Donald Trump and the USFL made plans to move to the fall.
If God wanted football in the spring, he wouldn't have created baseball.
Well, we had a good league, but I always said spring football will never work. it'll never be first class. And if you look at a building like this, it's 57th and 5th. It's the best location right next to Tiffany. And that's what I've been all about, doing the best. And spring football was not that. And I thought if we moved to the fall, we'd create tremendous problems for the NFL, and something would happen.
On October 17th,
This is really, really interesting. It's important to remember that Donald Trump has been involved in sports for 40 years or more, right? Back in the 1980s, he tried to start an alternative to the NFL league, right? The USFL, the United States Football League. Now, it was a complete and utter flop, and that's all well and good. But what it did was set him on a path towards more and more sports engagement, right? He was a booster of the USFL. Of course, he tried to buy the Buffalo Bills of the NFL. He put up the purse for lots of prize fights in the 1980s and 1990s, right? He has a long track record of being involved in sports. And every once in a while, of course, he gets involved with the WWE and actually engages in that simulated fisticuffs that they do over there. Donald Trump is a sports guy, right? And it fits his personality, the antagonism, the competition, the aggression, the masculinity of it all. And it provides him a vehicle as president of the United States for doing politics by other means. There are lots of places we can go when we think about Trump and sports, or sports and politics as a whole. One of them is, how long is this going to last? How long will sports fans embrace the political divisiveness that sports has become in the 2020s? Right? Sports, after all, is a TV show. And if people tune out of the TV show because it's too political or divisive or it's not fun anymore, then this whole engagement between Donald Trump and sports might fall by the wayside. On the international stage, there's another set of implications. American sports have long been a way of attracting attention to the US, right? An appealing way of reaching out to the world and saying, hey, this is our game, maybe you'd like to play too. It's an element of what we call soft power. But what happens if Donald Trump ruins it all? Right? What happens if the United States becomes disempowered in its soft power projection because it has been polluted by the kind of divisiveness that is associated with Donald Trump? We don't know, but we're definitely going to find out in 2026 with the Winter Olympics, with the World Cup, and of course in 2028 towards the end of his presidency with the LA Summer Olympics. We'll come back and talk about that a little bit later, won't we? All right, if you like that or if you don't like that, like us, subscribe to us, come back for more, and we'll see you again next time.